Hello, hi, my name is Tony Rettman. I wrote this book, Straight Edge, Clear-Headed Hardcore History, that my assistant will hold up here. And we'll be selling those later, along with sweatshirts and my other two books and pins and all other kind of medicine show kind of stuff. And this is Brian.
Hey.
Who, you want me to introduce?
Well, whatever you... It's your show.
Brian, who played in Minor Threat, 400, Dag Nasty,
Government Issue,
Bad Religion,
Junkyard, Meatmen,
Doggy Rock,
Bad Religion. I'm in another band with Ari, but we don't have a name yet.
I love that name.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. All right, so we'll sit down and make it official.
Yeah,
cool. All right. Let me pull out my handy dandy list of questions here. I guess first question will be like, as far as DC goes, from what I can understand, you lived there as a kid, left, lived in Detroit for or Michigan.
Yeah, when that was like pre-music though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I was 13, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you came back, and kind of when you came back, most of your friends were into punk.
Yeah, that's kind of how it all happened. Is that like I went to this school, and my dad got a new job, so we went to Detroit and came back like a year and a half later, and I went back to the same school, and all of my friends there had discovered basically this whole thing. Like they were, I guess, so this puts it in like early 80. So I had some friends who had already gone to see local bands, like seen the Teen Idols play, Bad Brains, and they had started to get records because there was one, like in pretty much every small scene, there's one record store that does the whole, you know, that is kind of the nucleus. And my friends had found this store that was about 20 miles out into Maryland, and they had like Sex Pistols and Clash records.
Yeah.
So when I came back, it was like, and they were, you know, of course, by doing this, they had become these outcasts in my school.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be with them.
Yeah.
For sure. Because it was kind of like, it all dovetailed nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's kind of interesting in a way. Like, I don't think you wanted to be around your friends and everything, but like, I don't think many people got into punk to be accepted or cool, kind of.
Yeah, it was, well, for me, it was like, because you go away for a year and a half at that, like, in 8th grade.
Yeah.
You come back and it's really it's a different thing. And I missed all of this time that these guys shared. And I felt like an outsider. So I kind of joined the outcasts in order to be accepted.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting flip, but that's just how it happened.
I think that says a lot to DC too, I think in the way of like, people were kind of doing that to maybe not necessarily be accepted, but just to be a part of something different.
It was so small then, though. I think that might come into play a few years later, once the DC like hardcore scene had been established. But at this point, like when these guys, I think let's just say my friends got into this in '79.
Yeah.
And right when I started, there were 50 people.
Yeah.
Total. And it wasn't like that. It was still basically like running for your lives from Marines in Georgetown. And you know, it was very very Lost Boys. It wasn't. it wasn't this desirable like you know social segment that you know I don't enjoy drinking either. I'll join these fellows. Maybe we'll drive up to New York. Cause some trouble. It wasn't like that. Yeah, it wasn't
cause
like
a
that.
ruckus.
Not them.
So how did you sort of like find your way into playing music?
Well, I played guitar.
Yeah.
I started playing guitar when I was 8, and I'm happy to say that I got really good. I peaked at about 10, which is where I've stayed, which is handy because I was good at 10. Now it just works. So I was in cover bands because I really like playing guitar, and my best friend Michael Hampton, who was in SOA, he was one of the guys. He went to my school. Like he was. I don't want to get too much into the autobiographical aspect of it, but when I started to get into punk, when I moved back to DC, Michael was my musician friend, and he was playing guitar. And so I kind of, it was really a case of getting to play punk music was that there were very few people who knew how to play an instrument. And if you had if you'd cut your own hair
Hmm.
and dyed it with your mom's hair dye and could play an instrument, you were in a band, because there were like 5 of us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it happened with me.
Yeah.
So it was just like there was a small pool available from which I was plucked.
Yeah. And as far as like DC goes, it seems like there is whatever this thing forms, whatever Minor Threat, write a song, kind of takes off in other aspects. But from what I can understand, like I remember interviewing you for the book, you kind of said something that was like a like eureka kind of thing to me, in that, you know, it wasn't necessarily about the rules, shall we say, of straight edge, but like it was a tool to form a community that was working outside of this already very established idea of like alcohol and live music has to be hand in hand.
Right, exactly. And it was, in the very beginning, it wasn't that a bunch of people went straight edge.
Yeah.
This all came from people who just like, I mean, I didn't drink because I was 15.
Yeah.
And I didn't hate my parents.
Yeah.
You know, like I just, most of us just didn't drink, and it became a big part of it because in order to play shows, it was basically dominated. You had to play in a place that sold alcohol.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, by be able to go to them and go, look, we want to have shows here. Nobody's going to drink. To show you nobody's going to drink, we're going to put these X's on our hands so the bartenders don't serve us. Mm-hmm. And it also identifies us as this, like, we're not going to get your license taken away kind of people. Mm. And if you see one of these people doing bad things, let us know, and, you know, call the cops or whatever. Like, being very, like, open. Like, all we want to do is a place to have music be played. Yeah. And that's kind of how it started and got bigger, because then you get people who are like, well, there's bands playing at this bar, but it's in the afternoon. Yeah. Who are these bands? What is this? Yeah. And you go see this, and then you have a lot of people who are too young to go to bars, who, well, fuck, I want to go see these bands now, and so that you kind of throw yourself in with it, you know. Yeah. And in general, that was kind of the case. I mean, there wasn't like a bunch of people weren't really abusing the privilege. Yeah. You know. Yeah. So there's kind of a happy accident.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is like not to make it sound like how, like, it's a crazy thought, I think, to some people that at some point there were shows where there were age limits in a way. Like, it's so, I think it's so like entrenched now or ingrained that maybe it was a radical thought. It was a radical concept then. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was unheard of, and that's like that also kind of is what started. I mean, I'm sure that like with rock and roll, it's the bands like. Not bands who got huge, but just I'm sure that there was, people were renting out VFW halls in the 50s and 60s to put on these shows because they couldn't do it in an established arena or venue or whatever. But I mean, this is at least the first time I've seen it as like a huge core element, is that you either have a existing place that's for overage people only, that you have them bend the rules because you have this new way of doing it, or people are really starting to just rent little halls or basements or whatever. I mean, that's part of how the music got out. Like the rock and roll version is not the same to me. It's like, this is a big component of all of that, was getting away from alcohol sales, so that you could, do your shows. Yeah, and that's kind of what started, because I must have been, half the shows I went to easily were in someone's basement when their mom was out of town, or my uncle's Korean War vet, and he and his drunk buddy said, "Okay, just don't break anything."
And like at a VFW,
or just other community centers where they went to. Yeah, DC is always good about that. Like, we're going to get back to the community. It's like, okay, well, we're going to mess up your community center.
Yeah, wasn't there shows in like high school, in Wilson High School or something like that?
Not Wilson. There was something. There's a couple little things, like schools would try that and then realize it was a terrible idea because they'd get other people who didn't go to the school. Yeah. Because you know how punks are. I mean, they'll go.
I've heard.
Yeah, they'll show up. Yeah. So that didn't really work with this. The school stuff didn't really take off.
So as far as being in Minor Threat and writing this song, like, when did you personally kind of see this move or take off, like this straight edge thing? Like, where did you like, oh, like this thing it's got some legs. Like
when we first started to see other scenes in other cities creating a straight edge scene.
Yeah.
I mean, Boston is the great example, but it is the first one. It's the first time we met the Boston guys. I wish I had a better memory, but I think they came down. Do you know?
Well, in the book, Ian says that that's for sale. Ian says that the first time SST came down was like for a show.
Like DOA at Woodlawn High School?
No, it was like the Chancery.
At the Chancery, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they came down and I think Iron Cross played. And
might have been Government Issue?
Maybe Government Issue.
Well, the first time we saw those guys, they came down, like, basically you've got this brand new black panel van with no windows. Like, which also, first of all, it's a really nice car.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And out comes, I'm going to say maybe 15 dudes.
Yeah.
And they're all, like, wearing stuff that says straight edge on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, I've just never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
And they were like, I mean, it's not like they weren't like this aggressive militia. It was just, they were cool dudes, but it was like, whoa, they took this and did their own thing with it.
Yeah.
And so that's how we met Decontrol and kind of all that whole Boston scene. We just immediately were like, well, we started to go up there to play shows because it's like, well, it was flattering and weird.
Yeah, yeah.
But they also had their own thing too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, I think I said to you, and it's at the time I always was like, I didn't have the ability to understand like, it's cool that this is happening somewhere else. Yeah. Like, I thought I had some proprietary thing on it. Like, make up your own thing, man.
Yeah.
Like, we wrote straight edge. It's like, that's so, you know, I was a kid. And my brain wasn't wired to understand that that's the point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, I could say that, like, I knew that us putting out records, it was never to sell records, it was so people would hear what we had to say. Because you didn't think about, like, there was no, it cost money to put records out.
Yeah.
And you got the money back and made your friend's record.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was easy for me to go like, well, the reason we put these out is so people hear what we have to say and to spread what we're doing.
Yeah.
But if I thought someone was co-opting what we were doing, I became really defensive about it.
Yeah.
And so that was like, not so much with the Boston, but I think with stuff that came after that later on. I just didn't have the ability to see. Yeah.
But I mean, like the first time Minor Threat toured the country, and you saw like maybe what was going on in like California or
there
Reno
wasn't any
or
straight edge anywhere.
Really? Like what are those like I think of like bands like Stalag 13 or like
that stuff was when we went out there we didn't know anything. That Minor Threat went out to California was like Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Like nobody drank and nobody was straight edge.
Yeah.
And people made fun of us for being straight edge. But we weren't like flying this flag. It was just like everybody knew Ian didn't drink.
Yeah.
Like I was the bass player and I was kind of young. Didn't pay much attention to me.
Yeah.
But it's like Ian was known as this guy because he'd written these great words, and you know the band people liked the band, but the attitude in California was like, "This is a great band. Don't care about the part about not drinking.
Yeah.
I just like I like the other songs or whatever."
Yeah.
But we didn't have like there was no real straight edge established straight edge community of any kind anywhere other than Boston.
Yeah.
That I recall in first touring like '81. You know that zone. I mean, that's my recollection of it.
It's interesting.
I mean, I could be wrong since you've studied it. But
I have studied it. But
yeah.
I've written a few books. So, as far as after, like, what is your kind of version of why Minor Threat ended?
We didn't like each other, and we were kids, and it didn't matter. We were 18. I was 17 or 18.
Yeah.
Basically, Lyle and I thought that we needed to move, like we wanted to become a big band.
Yeah.
And our idea of doing that was to like, just basically we thought, well, we can write more accessible songs, all this 18-year-old stuff. Like we're going to write more accessible songs and we've already got a good fan base and why don't we let's make it. Yeah. And Ian's attitude was like, well, no. Because this is making it, and the stuff we were writing was hard for him to sing, and also we just had a lot of personality clashes. It was always like two of us would gang up on the other two, and then you'd switch allegiances next week. Yeah. And it's high school shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And no one really, I mean, it took at least a decade before you really started to figure out that Minor Threat had this kind of significance. It was just another punk band, just like I mean, we're nothing. When we broke up, it was like, it wasn't like a Black Flag Dead Kennedys thing. It was like we're still just this sort of weird niche. And so that's basically the answer. It's like, oh, Lyle and I, well, hell, we'll just get Glenn Danzig to sing. Yeah. And then we'll go do this other thing, and you know. Yeah,
that was my next question. As far as like, was that the idea? Like, we're gonna form like a super group, or like,
kind of, but it was more.
Maybe we should preface that you were originally a member of Samhain.
I was.
Yeah,
but
that maybe was, people.
Well, but that's how that happened after. I mean, the idea was like, basically, Ian didn't want to sing anymore, and Lyle and I. What had happened in like all great relationships, instead of like actually having it out, you just don't really talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Like, well, you just didn't, you know, Ian just started to not go to practice, but we didn't have a discussion.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you're just kind of like freezing out your friends at the skate park. Because that guy threw up in your car, and you never talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just. Yeah. So when it became apparent that Ian didn't want to sing, Lyle and I, well, we're going to move forward.
Yeah.
And the timing was that Glenn was at the Misfits had broken up.
Yeah.
And so we just were like, well, why don't we call Glenn?
Yeah.
And Glenn's like, yeah, we should. Yeah, I'd like to do a band. And Lyle and I thought we were going to do a collaborative band with Glenn. And we were going to get Chuck Biscuits to play drums, who seemed interested, and our friend Graham from Negative Approach, who's in the Detroit book, I'm sure, who is also pretty good friends with the Misfits, you know, because the whole Detroit Necros Negative Approach. That's the band we were going to do, and we actually got together. Chuck Biscuits never rehearsed with us. Like, he lived in I think he was still in Canada. It just wasn't that easy, but we were all on the other side of the country, and so we wound up getting a local guy, Eric, to play drums.
Guy from Double O? Like,
no, he wound up in the Meatmen.
Okay.
But he wasn't from a punk background at all. He was like a drummer.
He was the guy who had like the rototoms. I remember that from the first time I saw the Meatmen.
Yeah, his uncle has a country place like that. He was full of that guy. And then we rehearsed maybe a couple of times, but you know, I think we could, as students of music, we can figure out that Glenn kind of is his own thing. Yeah. And basically it was like Glenn wanted to, sure, if we wanted to play what Glenn wanted to play, that would be cool. And at the time also, again, this wasn't like life-changing. It was like, well, I've got to get a new job. Yeah. No, I mean, my parents were asking me why I wasn't in college. I mean, like, I was a courier. I had a job. I wasn't thinking in big terms like, well, we better do what Glenn says or we're never going to get up there. It was like, well, no, Glenn wants to do this thing, and I don't want to dye my hair black. Yeah. And he lives in New York, and it's kind of a hassle, and I got to go to school, you know, so it just kind of didn't happen. And that's where we actually, Glenn thought of the name Samhain when we were practicing, and then Lyle, whose hair was dyed black, wound up playing with him a little longer than I did. Yeah. But still, it was just, this is still hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
This is hobbies. This is like I'm into painting. You know, Glenn was like collected toys and was into horror and like music. Yeah. And it was all just components of his worldview. So I mean, you know, it was like, I mean, he's totally my dude. Yeah. So it's like there was no negativity about it. It just didn't work out. Yeah.
So as far as Dag Nasty goes, like, what was the? Because I have some crackpot theories of my own that, you know, I've written in my Unabomber shack. But I'm kind of curious what, like, if there was a concept behind the band, or like or just an idea.
Yeah, I had kind of screwed around pretending to go to college, and I was in the Meatmen, but we didn't really play a lot. It was just kind of, you know, I probably played 4 or 5 shows. We were just kind of hanging out because Tesco's rad, as you know. And, I just wasn't being serious about music, and school was not working for me, and I just didn't, I felt like I started to really not go to school, and I was still a courier, and I'm like, you know, what I really want to do is I want to get in a van and tour. And I said, well, what I should do is I want to form a band and be really good and go tour, and we have a great advantage in that, you know, that Minor Threat still has this resonance. Yeah. And the scene had gotten so much exponentially bigger just from like when Minor Threat broke up to now we're talking about 85, and it's really, especially the West Coast, it was just, it got huge, and I'm like, there's demand. All we have to do is like, I want to form a band and make a record and go tour. Yeah. And I formed a band with guys that I was hanging out with. Yeah. Like, I mean, I knew Sean from just the scene. Yeah. And Roger and Colin were in other bands, and I knew that they were available, and they played together together, and it's always great to get a drummer and bass player who like grew up together.
Yeah.
It's just, there's something awesome about that. And so I was just like, well, let's form a band, and they were like, okay. I mean, it was
that.
Yeah. And that was the whole idea. It was just, the goal was, let's make a record and go on tour.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about sharing.
Yeah.
Or like, supporting my own scene. It was about getting out.
Yeah.
And going out there and seeing what's out there.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to see the country and the world, hopefully.
Yeah. I always wondered if it was like something of a, not necessarily, I don't know if like pushback is a strong enough word, but I always wondered if that band was sort of like, we're gonna give people what we want that's coming out of DC, rather than like, at that time there was like Right to Spring and all these other bands which are really good, but like I was always wondering if like Dag Nasty were like, well, people want like DC
people want
hardcore,
they want their damn DC hardcore.
They want something thrashable, as the kids call it.
Well, I think it wasn't as contrived as that, though. I mean, it was somewhat contrived. I'm like, we should all bleach our hair blonde. This will be rad. I mean, I did think, I was a moron. I mean, I wanted to do a band that people would dig, but it wasn't about the creative output. It was, that's just the way we played. And, at the time when a band started, I mean, I was writing words and Sean was writing words. I was still, I was sober, and I kind of thought that the Dag Nasty version of Straight Edge was was not dogmatic, and it was, if we had songs that could be interpreted that way, but they weren't they weren't part of this straight edge
black
thing
and white kind of
at all. And I think Sean didn't drink either then. Roger did, but not, like normal people, not like alcoholics, like normal people.
Like normal people drink.
Yeah. So it wasn't to be a straight edge band, but there are some elements, obviously, when you look at it back, it's like, well, this is a great way to try to do that, to do what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
But also, we predated Right to Spring.
Yeah.
All of that DC, that whole thing, that kind of like flowers on the ground, people crying thing, that was after us. So we weren't pushing back against that.
Okay.
We were just doing our own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We made fun of it later.
Yeah, don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong.
Again, now the scene's got 100 people. We still know each other.
Yeah. So when Dag Nasty is touring, there is this second wave of straight edge with Youth of Today and Bold and things like that. And what maybe we already covered this. Like, what was your take on it then, as far as like playing with these bands and kind of witnessing it?
I thought it was like reenactments. I didn't think it was cool, and as I said before, I didn't have the capacity to understand that there was some reverence there. There were people who respected the idea. I just thought of it as like, copycat. Like, this is like a Chinese version of a Range Rover. Like, what the fuck is this? But I was an asshole. I'm also now I'm 19.
Yeah.
Woo!
You're a man of the world.
Unemployable, like trying to play guitar. I mean, it's just not that great. And of course, in retrospect, that was a pretty selfish and not a fair assessment at all. But at the time, I think it had a lot to do with, by the second Dag Nasty record, I'm high as a kite.
Yeah.
And you could tell by the pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden, like, the whole thing is like, it's just different. We don't sound like that. Yeah. The lyrics are about getting fucked up. Yeah. I've got long hair, which I'm working on again. It's been a tough road. Growing out the alt-right cut. I know. They ruined the hair for me now. Yeah. I can't have it. So that, I think there is maybe I was not conscious, but there's a subconscious reaction to like, well, I don't want to be, we can't be part of that, all of those, that whole straight edge resurgence, that very, aggressive kind of Varsity Jacket straight edge, because that's just not, I didn't really understand it, and I just didn't give it the respect that I think a lot of it deserved. In going back, I get it, but at the time I didn't.
Yeah. So since you brought it up, so that sort of unsober-esque, that was going on during Dag Nasty.
I would say, well, it was basically like by the time I was 21, coincidentally.
You
obeyed
the law.
I wasn't. No, I just wasn't. I was just experimenting. Like, I wasn't. It didn't get into like Junkyard level. at that point. This was just more that
if there could be a pie chart.
I didn't consider myself. I didn't consider myself to be straight edge.
Yeah.
And I would like get drunk at a party, but I did not have an alcohol lifestyle or a drug lifestyle. And I still lived in the Dag house, was this group house, and there were sober people and not sober. I mean, it was just it wasn't a thing. It was just it just wasn't. I don't know how to describe it, because it's now that I know I'm an alcoholic. At the time, you would say like, well, it was just fine. I was handling things, but I wasn't even really drinking that much. It was just that what I was doing was not aligning myself with the straight edge community.
Well, that's what I would say. Like, was there a reaction towards that in a way, like subconsciously or something?
I don't think I thought about it that much. I mean, a lot of this in retrospect looks like it, but no, I just I was at a party in Bethesda and had a couple wine coolers, and there were some hot girls there. Yeah. I'm 19.
Yeah.
I mean, that I was having that kind of that high school experience that you normally have in like 10th grade. Mine had just gotten postponed because I never had that. Yeah. Because I had just been, I'd been straight and in this punk rock scene. So I kind of was just seeing what that was about. And of course, like we all learned, it's really not that great. Yeah. But it was, I think that was what broke open that part of my life. Yeah. And the thing is, you can really hear it in the music. Yeah. So I think that's kind of why it's relevant to discuss now. Is that? Yeah. Well, I mean, Field Day is sort of all over the place. Yeah. Good record, but it's all over the place. Well, it's like how the band was. Yeah. It's like we didn't know where we lived. Yeah. And we had, that record. Half the songs I think could be really good, and then there's some that just aren't. But they can't all be winners too. This is still when you're still before even the idea of like, is this going to sell? Yeah. This is about having a way to play shows. Yeah. And that's what you have a record because, well, now we can go back to Detroit, or now we can go back to Vancouver. Yeah. But you're not. It's still not when you're thinking about it being monetized. So Field Day is just like. I think in one sense, I mean, it's not my favorite Diagnosty record, but in one sense I do like it because it's like, this is what we're doing right now. Yeah. And there was no constraints about it. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think I bought a Stratocaster, and that changes a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that explains like the Robert Cray-esque. Yeah, because I was really into Robert Cray, and so I was very clever and said, why don't I just write a song just like Robert Cray? And what's the saddest is that now we're here. There's so many better blues guys. Than Robert Cray. Well, he's fine, but I should have at least been Jimmy Page enough to go to the source. Yeah. It was definitely a watered down kind of. Thing. But whatever. Hey. They can't all be winners. Exactly. That's true. So would you say with the Junkyard lifestyle, that's when things got more clouded, shall we say? I would say so. Yeah. I mean, but that was just that was like a winning the lottery thing. I mean, it was just. Kind of like I was in Diagnosty and I was living in an apartment with 3 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, and within 3 or 4 months I'm like on a tour bus and just rocketed in this whole new crazy world, and there's guys with suits who were handling this was back in the 80s when it was like a record deal on a major label and all of this and perfect, just like you would think. Like we didn't know like, well, wait a minute, so all this money you're spending, we actually owe that. You aren't thinking that. You're doing, I mean, I'm the poster child of everything I read now. It's like, well, idiots, shouldn't they have known? He sold his publishing. What a moron. Wow, he sold his merchandise. Yeah. Well, so I'm 23, and I'm selling my merchandise, and I'm rolling around in a tour bus. And it was just this, exactly, too much. And it was really fun until it wasn't. Yeah. And it was. I don't regret any of it. I would do it again. I learned everything I learned about the music business through that. Yeah. And about just so many valuable lessons and a great experience to have. And I'm glad I had it when I was that young. Yeah. But that just kind of that skewed things. And also it was the first time I was actually like, wait a minute, so I'm actually a musician for a living. Yeah. Because none of that was before that was ever that. Yeah. It was this is my fun thing. so it just kind of put me on a reset. You know, what the fuck is this? You know, and that's why that was a good period, as well as a bad period. Yeah.
So when was this sort of realization or sort of awakening of like, hey, I should stop doing this?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, you know, I just realized that I couldn't manage my life anymore.
Yeah.
And I got sober. Like, I went to rehab over 5 years ago, and stopped all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just was like, well, this is. It wasn't like an event, or I'd had this bottom or anything. It was just like, this is just not rad. And you know, being old and fucked up is so lame. Like, it's good. Yeah, you just can't be. You know,
yeah, it's not a cool.
Like,
it's not a very. Very few people can pull that off.
It's a bad look.
Yeah, very few people can.
And it was exhausting, and it was unfair to my family.
A lot of work.
Selfish.
Yeah.
And so I threw myself on the mercy of the court, and thank fucking God I did, because I can't. You know, I'm just so happy that period is over, and I really enjoy this.
Yeah.
And you know, so I feel young again, but also it's because I was like this when I was young.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of that whole thing. I mean, if I could just tell you the first time I realized I could drive a car at night, it's like I didn't know what the color the dashboard lights were in my car, because I had never driven it at night because I was drunk. Which I guess maybe that's good, but on the other side, how fucking sad is that? Like, oh my honey, they're blue. Cool. Like, God.
Yeah.
So lame.
So, as through this whole time, I'm sure the irony wasn't lost on you.
It was commented on. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No, not at all. It was fun.
So now, in the rear view, are you sort of like, oh, like I was part of something cool, like at least something I was a part of, whether it's skewed into like crazy gangs or these things, like what the thing that you were at the catalyst for, are you happy to be a part of that?
Incredibly.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly grateful, incredibly lucky. But I'm grateful for the Junkyard thing too.
Yeah.
It's like that's all part of this whole trip.
Yeah.
And I am astonished that Minor Threat has such significance. And just I'm really, really proud of it. Yeah. And you know, how it's impacted what I do now. I mean, I am a guitarist. Yeah. And fortunately, I live in New Jersey now, so everything's mellow. Yeah. You know, it's just been a great thing. And you know, I never really. Again, I've never that whole like, you know, marauding gangs, straight edge thing. You know, I never saw that in person.
Neither. So.
And I don't really know how much of that is like a couple of kids who are mad, you know, at the BFW hall. Like, I don't know how big that was.
I mean, I agree, but apparently I learned a lot from doing this book that there was a whole straight edge gang culture in Utah where like
Utah.
Well, there we go. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
But where it's like something where, I mean, I interviewed a guy who killed somebody. It was some guy who killed another.
For breaking edge?
No, that would make it. That would be weird. No, yeah. It was more of like it was actually like a gang fight, like on a Halloween night where, I know, I'm really painting a great picture here.
A straight edge gang fight?
Well, these guys were like a straight edge gang, I guess. It's a very West Side story. Yeah. But and the other side was like an actual gang, like a bunch of like Samoan guys who were a gang, who like threatened them, and then it became a whole fight where one guy. This part was all very foggy to me, or it didn't make any sense in that he was like, so like we were chasing this guy and the guy fell, so there were these kids in a pickup truck, and one of them had a bat, and I asked him for the bat, and he beat the guy with the bat, but then after he beat the guy with a bat to death, apparently another guy came and stabbed him afterwards, just for good measure.
None of this is posy.
No, I know, right?
Yeah, this
was like I stepped out of the picture at this point, and I was like, man, I'm glad I'm not a fucking part of that. Like,
wow.
But yeah, not positive at all. No. But
should talk to our friend Toby Morse. Straighten that right out.
Yeah. Well, he could have. You know, he had comments in the book about that. But anyway, I think that's it for me. If open it up to
if anyone has any
open it to the floor,
questions or comments about Tony, I'd be happy to answer them. And also the general, just this part of New Jersey, I've been exploring it a lot because I moved here in May. So I'm really up on stuff if you need any travel advice. Some orchards are cool and some day trips.
You have? Yeah.
In an interview, you said that like Minor Threat wasn't just like another like band of punk kids. Like they were on a dime musicians that eventually knew how to do their stuff.
Yeah.
And when you think about straight edge, and especially once you get up to like you said that varsity, jagged straight edge, you see a lot of these bands like the production of the records is getting better. And I wanted to know if you thought there was any like correlation between wanting to be straight and wanting your records to sound clear and having the production be a little better than the lo-fi that come before you.
No, I think it's really just about how recording progressed and how you could get much more sophisticated recordings. You were right at the. I mean, the reason our records were lo-fi is because it was on a 4-track, and in somebody's basement, and we just didn't. It wasn't on purpose. It's because that's what we had. And if you fast forward, to 1990, the idea of having access to a 24-track recording studio or 16-track is like that's everywhere. And so I think that's really the sonic thing. I don't think has anything to do with straight edge. I think it has to do with Macintosh preamps and all these Neve boards that people started to replace, so you could buy them early. You could buy them and put them in your own studio.
Anyone else?
Yeah, boom. Coming out of Junkyard to say like Bad Religion, two different genres, maybe different tuning, different sounds. Was it an easy transformation to go back to like punk rock, or?
Well, see, the problem is in Junkyard I was playing punk rock in a rock and roll band, and I still play. I mean, I play the same in all the bands. I don't know if you've heard any Bad Religion. There's some noodling on there that'll make your mother cry. It's just like, I mean, I just do this one thing. And it just kind of plugs. I mean, there was no real transition issue. And that, again, the Bad Religion thing was like, these were guys I was friends with forever. So it was like, do you want to come and play in this band? I mean, it's hard to describe. Like, I wasn't trying to, like, it wasn't like I'm trying out or trying to like, well, I hope I can do this. It was more like, oh, well, Brett can't play. Do you want to come play with Hudson? Yes. It just kind of just all fluid. I mean, not trying to make it sound so easy, but it really kind of is. It's bar chords.
Anyone? No? Come on. There we go. Boom.
What was the difference in gear between Can I Say and say Wig Out as far as how did you get I noticed there's like a clean song like When I Move is acoustic. Yeah. Did you upgrade your gear? Did you change anything? Settings, pedals?
Well, when you're talking about the recorded stuff, it was just about trying, like, When I Move was, I believe is that on Wig Out?
Yeah.
That was just wanted to do an acoustic song. Right. I think it really was just a product of getting the sound that you hear in your head. We're like, well, how do we do that? And that sounded like acoustic. I'm sure I tried to play it just an electric guitar with a volume turned down, and I was like, well, there's probably an acoustic at the studio. But the gear did change over the period of Diagnosty because I was trying to do more than just a Marshall, and I know I can't imagine why I did this because I'm sure it sounded terrible, but I had a jazz chorus head that I would play through a Marshall 2x12, 4x12, and then I had like a 100-watt JMP through two other cabinets. I just played them both at the same time, the whole time. But the clean signal was just going. If you just heard the clean, it was just. It must have been just like a banjo, but I thought it was rad. And I don't, we didn't have a sound man or anything too, so who knows? I mean, I'm sure that there's some live tapes. It's like, what is that noise? Why is there a hamster cage? But I was just trying to make it. My idea of bigger was like more, and I didn't know anything about stereo or I'm still kind of a neophyte about that stuff. I've learned a little bit, but yeah, it was just as the band started to play stuff that was less linear, I was trying to find ways to copy what happened on the records with varying degrees of success.
Yep. Anyone? No? Oh, there we go. Boom.
Looking back, who was your favorite vocalist in Diagnostic?
Sean, actually. And that's why Sean's the vocalist now. Sean sounds like Dynasty to me because that's the band we started, and that's. I mean, Dave was great, and Peter was great, and Peter brought a kind of a. Peter was perfect for where we were emotionally, and he was part of it too. But pound for pound, Sean is not bullshit. He's the real guy, and I just love the way he sings the stuff, you know. And I for me, the strongest Dynasty really is the hardcore Dynasty. I think it's stood the test of time in a much different way. I like the esoteric stuff, but I don't think it's really the meat of what the band was, especially live. So that's why I like Sean. He's the best for that kind of thing. You have any questions?
I think you want me. You want to?
No,
you want
it's
some
fine.
more?
No, I can.
You want some more?
I'm almost out of coffee. I'm good.
Okay. My question is.
I want my book.
Get it later. That's your payment. I have a weird. This is like a weird question, but when Junkyard first toured the East Coast, weren't you somebody else, like somebody big was opening for you, right? Or no?
We had not our first trips, but we had the Black Crowes open for us for a run. Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And you know, you could see instantly that they were much better than we were.
Yeah.
But it was fun. But my first Bad Religion tour, Green Day was opening for us.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've learned a lot about being second banana. So they were great. They were really nice, and their band they were really cool. And Chris Robinson can sing.
Oh yeah.
He's such a good singer.
I'm still a big fan.
Yeah,
of
I dig it. I mean, the first two Crowes records are awesome.
Yeah,
and,
I like. No. I celebrate their whole catalog.
And the bass player in the Crowes at that time, Johnny Colt, is now in Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
And Junkyard toured with opening for Leonard Skinner, which is another one of the most crazy, massively cool things I've done with my life. Like, what the fuck does, you know? So it's really cool to have all this, like, you know, it's like, I was on tour in Europe with Bad Religion, and those guys in Bad Religion, like, I mean, they know about my stuff, but they don't really care at all, which I get. Like, Graffin's got more to worry about than what metal band I was in. He just does not care. And we all checked into this hotel, and the Skinner dudes are there in the lobby. Yeah. And Graffin was just like Leon Wilkinson, who of course was alive then. He's like, just comes over like, Brian, what's up, brother? And Graffin's just like, what the fuck? How do you know this guy? What do you know? It's like Gary Rossington walking by. And I'm like, Gary, hey, buddy.
Wow.
It was just so cool when you think about this crazy world. It's like, wow, that was a...
Yeah, you can maneuver in so many different worlds now. It's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Again, you know, first three Skinner records required guitar listening.
Oh,
great
hold
sounds.
back my bullets.
Awesome.
Yeah. And but the question I was going to ask was, my brother who saw Junkyard the first time he came to the East Coast told me this story that on the top of your stacks you had like a Budweiser tall boy, but between songs you drank like water from the Budweiser. And it was like for show?
No, I wish that there was that kind of attention to detail. I don't think there'd be anything on top of the stack because I couldn't it would be a bad idea.
Well, I was thinking like it'd be great if you had it up there and like it was just like Velcroed on, like when you wheel it out.
I think from the suede vest I was wearing with no shirt, and my hair down to my ass, it was obvious that you didn't need a Budweiser can on my hand to like advertise the change. No, I'm sorry, but I was probably drinking water because I was thirsty.
Okay, so that brings up a good thing. What's like the craziest story you heard that wasn't true about you or anything?
Oh fuck, I don't know. I'd love to make one up, but I'm not that. Come on. Yeah, I really don't. You know, unfortunately, a lot of them are true. And I can't really think of. I wish I was a better interviewee, but I can't think of any real. Did
you turn down REM?
Well, yeah, but see, I turned down the chance to be a touring member, like not in like, hey, come join us.
One of the guys on stage. This is like back.
Yeah, just the extra guy on stage. So and it was I got that job, and then Bad Religion needed someone to replace Brett, and so I took that. So it wasn't like a.
That was like being part of the band.
Fuck art, I don't need you. It was that's how it comes, but it's not like that at all. It's like I got a gig that I thought was more long term, and the REM guys were cool because I said, but I have another guy who's good, and they picked him, and so my friend got to tour with them, and it wasn't like the drama wasn't there.
It all evens out.
It all evens out. Yeah. And I won because REM broke up. See?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like
years ago.
So it was great for
how
your.
How about that?
Yeah.
Stipe.
Yeah, it's good for your branding, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do I have a brand?
You might not think so, but I think.
I better learn more about it. I got to have an answer to that. Like, what's the one?
We got to work on your brand.
Yeah.
No. All right. Anything else? Anybody else? Boom.
Does it blow your mind that when you were packing your original records in Discord that people would be paying hundreds of dollars for them in the future?
What blows my mind away is that people are paying thousands of dollars for the test pressings.
Yeah.
That's even crazier. But yeah, I would never, even a million years, consider that. They were just sitting there with the Yoo-Hoo glue sticks, like at Discord House, which was, a fallout shelter. In fact, we even call it a house as well. It's like, who's going to rent to a bunch of people like us?
Yeah.
That's the house you get.
Yeah.
No, never. It was, maybe that's, I like to think that that's part of maybe why this lightning in a bottle existed, that there was never any concept of longevity or perceived value of trying to be culturally significant. It was just this thing that was happening, and like a lot of other people, maybe that's like I don't know. I can't think of a really great analogy, but no idea. And I'm really glad it worked out that way, though. I personally wouldn't pay that much.
Yeah.
It's just maybe I'm in the wrong store to say that. Okay, 100.
With any minor
100
test
fine.
pressings here.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else? Anyone?
You don't have to. It's cool. Don't let him threaten you.
Everybody has to ask a question before they leave. And buy a book. No. I have a question about Warzone. That's the guy to ask.
Yeah. What about the struggle do you need to know?
That's the guy. That's a Warzone expert. Cool. I don't know. We're good?
Well,
We're good?
cool. Good talking to you.
No, it's fun.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.